this Spotlight video, we will provide a brief overview of the PeopleSoft Fluid User Interface, and we will cover these topics. Understanding Fluid Development. We will describe the tools, technologies, and steps involved in fluid application development. This will be followed by a topic where we describe how to create fluid pages. Next, we will describe how to create and register your fluid components. After that, we will describe a set of tasks to include fluid features in your fluid pages. We will finish up with a topic where we describe some advanced page design features for your fluid pages. And in the final topic, we will point you to additional sources of information on the PeopleSoft Fluid User Interface and developing fluid applications. In this topic, we provide a brief overview of the Fluid User Interface. Fluid applications take advantage of the latest web development standards, HTML5 and CSS3. Fluid applications enable you to provide the most modern features for your user base, all based on international industry standards. Fluid applications are flexible, responsive, and adaptive, can be accessed from a variety of form factors, and adjust as needed for that form factor. A single fluid page definition can render differently and appropriately, depending on the device accessing the PeopleSoft system. Fluid applications are attractive, efficient, and offer the user experience today's users need and expect. Classic PeopleSoft applications aren't going away. With each new release or POM image, you can expect to see more fluid offerings such as applications, features, and capabilities, as well as more seamless blending of the classic and fluid application experiences. With the introduction of Classic Plus in PeopleTools 856, the classic applications converted to Classic Plus now have the look and styling of fluid applications. This video assumes you have a basic understanding of PeopleSoft applications. You should also have a working knowledge of Application Designer specific to creating pages, creating components, registering components, and general PeopleSoft application development tasks. Because we will register the fluid component in the portal registry, prior knowledge of the purpose and architecture of the portal registry will also be helpful. To test the application built in this video, we will need to add a tile to a fluid homepage in order to access and use the fluid application. Any prior knowledge of these concepts and constructs will be helpful. For more information on fluid application development, fluid home pages, and tiles, see the PeopleSoft PeopleTools online help. In this topic, we will describe the tools and technologies used to build fluid applications. We will also review the 8 steps of PeopleSoft application development through the eyes of someone building fluid applications. If you have customized or created PeopleSoft applications in the past, you may be pleased to know that you don't need to learn how to use new development tools to create fluid applications. To create a fluid application, you use familiar tools and technology like Application Designer and PeopleCode. You'll use Application Designer to create pages, add page controls, create components, and so on. And, just as you did with classic applications, you'll use PeopleCode to add business logic to your applications. Just so you know, PeopleCode written for your classic applications can be reused for your fluid pages and applications. While numerous additional PeopleCode constructs have been created specifically for fluid application development, your existing PeopleCode can be leveraged in fluid applications as well. Exposure to and understanding of CSS3 is a requirement for any developer creating or modifying fluid applications, style sheets, or style classes. Fluid applications rely on CSS not just for look and feel characteristics. CSS controls page layout and positioning of page controls. CSS is what provides the flexible, responsive nature of the PeopleSoft Fluid User Interface. PeopleTools has based fluid page rendering on the concept of the flexible box model, a W3 standard, also called Flexbox. With fluid applications, you won't write HTML directly, but being familiar with the new HTML5 constructs and how responsive and adaptive applications take advantage of these constructs can be helpful. JavaScript can be used to enhance fluid applications in some situations, but should be used with careful consideration. As with classic applications, you build fluid applications using the same PeopleSoft application development steps in Application Designer. You create fields, records, and build SQL tables just as you would for a traditional PeopleSoft classic application. These development steps on the slide have been listed in our documentation and training courses for decades, and they continue to apply to fluid application development. While you will use the same general development steps when it comes to designing fluid pages and configuring fluid components, you will employ some different techniques and you will have a new set of options for designing a fluid application. Is the fluid user interface a significant change with regard to how PeopleSoft applications look and feel? Absolutely. But in these last few slides, what we have seen is that you will continue to use a familiar development environment and framework to create or modify fluid applications. So while you do get to use a familiar development tool to create fluid pages, there are some key differences that you'll want to keep in mind when you are creating fluid applications as opposed to creating classic applications. First, let's talk about the layout approach. In the classic approach, that was a manual layout approach. And what you saw at design time is virtually identical to what you saw at runtime. It was a what you see is what you get scenario. With Fluid, you create a structure on the page, adding your group boxes and your controls, often within subpages. The physical placement of the page elements often has no bearing on how it will appear at runtime. At runtime, CSS controls how the page and how the page elements are displayed to the user. With tab ordering in Classic, tab ordering is controlled by the Order tab of the page definition. In Fluid, it is controlled by the structure's rendering order. And when applying styles in Classic, typically, fixed form was used and you would select the delivered styles from drop-downs in the Page Field Properties dialog box. With Fluid, only freeform styles are used and you enter those styles and apply them to page elements using the Fluid tab. Note that with Fluid development, you can also apply styles dynamically through PeopleCode at runtime. In this video, we will use the tools and steps you would use to create any Fluid application. In this case, we will convert a simple existing PeopleSoft Classic page into a Fluid page. After each topic is covered, you will then see the task completed in the demonstration. At the end of the video, we will have a fully converted Fluid application. The page we will use is the My System Profile page delivered with all versions of PeopleTools. While this video is based on PeopleTools 861, anyone with PeopleSoft applications based on PeopleTools 854 or later can try this activity on their own. We will create a Fluid page, create a Fluid component, register the component, and then add a tile to a Fluid homepage. After viewing the results, we will perform some simple cleanup tasks to complete the conversion. After you have been introduced to these main steps of Fluid application development, you can use these skills to begin building your own Fluid applications. With the Classic Plus feature introduced in PeopleTools 856, the My System Profile page is now delivered with Classic Plus styling. This demonstration gives you a side-by-side comparison of an actual Fluid application versus both Classic Plus and Classic Rendering of the same features and controls. This is a good opportunity to note that when determining whether to convert your existing Classic applications to Fluid, consider whether the application will be used on smartphones and tablets as well as on laptop and desktop computers, thereby taking advantage of the responsive and adaptive nature of Fluid applications across all form factors. Will the application benefit from the easy access from a tile on the home page or dashboard, or if the application is administrative in nature, Would it benefit from a simpler reworking to make it Classic Plus? But remember, whether you're converting an existing Classic application to Fluid or creating a Fluid application from scratch, the information in this video and these demonstrations will introduce you to the main steps of Fluid application development. In this topic, we will cover the task of creating Fluid pages. You create Fluid page definitions in Application Designer, just as you do any PeopleSoft definition. Select File, New, to create a new definition, but then select Page, Fluid. When you create a new Fluid page, the Choose Layout Page dialog box will be displayed, which prompts you to select a layout page. Layout pages are templates you can use to help you create various Fluid page types by providing the initial building blocks. This can save time and bring consistency to your development efforts. PSL apps content is the layout page that is considered the basis of any Fluid page. By selecting the PSL apps content layout page, Application Designer performs the following. Creates a new Fluid page definition. Automatically adds the required outermost group box in which all other page content must be contained. And automatically applies the PS apps content CSS style to this outermost group box. As mentioned previously, the Fluid user interface follows the Flexbox approach with regard to layout with CSS. This outermost group box with the PS apps content style applied is the basis of PeopleSoft's Flexbox approach. Note that throughout this video, we will further discuss the significance of using group boxes in Fluid page development and how CSS styles can be applied to group boxes. Per the W3C, in the Flex layout model, the children of a Flex container can be laid out in any direction and can flex their sizes, either growing to fill unused space or shrinking to avoid overflowing the parent. Both horizontal and vertical alignment of the children can be easily manipulated. See the URL displayed on your screen. In Fluid page development, the group box is the primary control. On a Fluid page, group boxes can provide visual cues for grouping page elements just as they do in Classic pages. But, more importantly for Fluid development, group boxes act as a container for controls and page elements. PeopleTools uses group boxes on Fluid pages to create containers for page content. A Fluid page can have one or more group boxes to act as containers for page elements. In most cases, a page has numerous group boxes. Render HTML div tags for these page containers. Apply specific CSS styles to these containers. This means that by using group boxes, you can logically contain sets of page elements and apply CSS styles to just the elements in that container. The diagram depicts how group boxes can be used to create container entities on a page. When group boxes are nested within each other, the outermost group box governs the behavior of the group boxes and controls within it. While inner group boxes may apply additional styling, the scope of the styles applied by an inner group box is limited to the contents within that rectangle. The outer group box is the parent. An inner group box is a child. Group boxes within the same group box container are siblings. In the example on the screen, assume group box 1 is the outermost group box of the entire page with the PS apps content styling applied to it. This group box acts as the overarching Fluid container for the rest of the Fluid page elements. Group boxes 2, 3, and 4 work to create an HTML structure of nested group boxes to which different but complementary CSS styling can be applied. Often on a main Fluid page, group boxes contain subpages to reduce clutter, group related fields, and segregate business logic. This screenshot illustrates a simple example of group boxes arranged on a Fluid page definition to create multiple nested containers. Often, on a main Fluid page definition, you won't see page controls like edit boxes or radio buttons. The main fluid page definition creates the high-level structure, and the actual page content would be stored in separate subpages. Subpages reduce clutter in the main page, group related fields into separate entities, logically separate business logic. As you can see, the subpages are contained within multiple group box containers on the main fluid page. A group box must be used to enclose an embedded subpage on the main page. And the subpage itself must start with a group box as with other fluid page definitions. This is in order to maintain proper group box content boundaries. Let's take a look at the page properties you need to consider for fluid pages. These are found on the Use tab and the Fluid tab of the Page Properties dialog box. We will work more with these settings later in this video, but let's briefly describe them now. On the Use tab, the main property to select is Fluid Page. For a page to be displayed and rendered as fluid, the Fluid Page checkbox must be selected. This is required for fluid pages. Note that when you select Page Fluid to create a new fluid page definition, the system automatically selects the fluid page property. On the Fluid tab, you find these options. Use style classes to enter the application-specific style classes to apply in addition to the system default styles, PeopleTool styles applied by default. Separate multiple style classes with a space. Use form factor style class override to override any application-specific styles based on the form factor or device size of the device accessing the page. Form factors are represented in these ranges. Small applies to most smartphones, medium applies to 7-inch tablets, large applies to 10-inch tablets and laptops, extra large applies to large monitors and desktop computers. Use suppress system-specific style classes to bypass the system default style applied by PeopleTools. If not selected, the application-specific style will be appended to the default system style such that both styles are used. In this demonstration, we will begin converting the My System profile page from a classic page into a fluid page. The first thing we need to do is create our fluid page definition. Note that while the My System profile component was converted to Classic Plus in PeopleTools 856, we have reverted to the Tangerine theme type for displaying classic components in this demonstration. From the system information displayed by clicking Ctrl+J or Shift+Ctrl+J, we can access the information we need to convert this page. We need the name of the page definition and the component definition. In Application Designer, you may want to create a project and bring in the component and page definitions for the classic My System profile. So next we'll want to create a new fluid page definition. Select File, New. Select Page, Fluid. And now we'll need to select a layout page. We'll use the standard one, PSL Apps Content. Recall that this is the foundation for any standard fluid page. And we'll enter a page name. And to indicate that it's a fluid definition, we'll add _FL at the end. You'll also be prompted to save a copy of the people code associated with the layout page. It's usually a good idea to just click Yes. That way, if there is people code associated with the layout page that you might need, you can bring it into each new page definition, saving you time in the future. The result is a new fluid page definition. It is empty except for the outermost group box. This acts as the container for all of the fluid page elements. If we go to the page properties and go to the Use tab, we can see that the fluid page option is already selected. This is because we used a fluid page layout template when we created our fluid page. If we were creating this page from scratch, we would need to manually select this option to ensure the page rendered as fluid. If this is not selected, the page will not render as fluid. When we open the group box properties and go to the Fluid tab, We see that the outermost group box already has the PS apps content style applied. This style is very important. It provides the styling that makes all elements within this group box fluid, thus acting as the page's flexbox container. So in our project, we have the definition of the My System profile page, user self-service. What we are going to do is copy the contents of this page into our new fluid page. Select all to select all the content of the page and then copy it. Click to position and paste the content within the group box container. So in this case, we are reusing the content from the classic page in our fluid page. If you were creating a new page, rather than copying the existing content into the group box container, you would be adding additional group box containers, page controls, sub-pages, and so on. You might need to move some of the content around and resize the page and the outermost group box so that everything fits inside. Make sure to save the page definition. You'll get a message indicating that grids in a fluid page cannot have classic grid layouts. We'll click OK at this point because in a later demonstration, the grid layout will be changed. Then this message will not appear when you save the page. You'll get another message indicating that some record fields occur more than once on this page. We'll just click OK at this point. It was OK on the classic page definition and will be fine for this demonstration. So now we've created our new fluid page definition. Next, we'll work on creating a fluid component. Before we can view our fluid page, we need to add it to a fluid component. In this topic, we will cover the tasks for creating and registering fluid components. Like classic applications, a fluid application uses fluid components to contain sets of fluid pages. The component contains one or more primary fluid pages, which are the main pages containing the application content. The component must also contain any other custom pages required for the application. For example, if you have created a custom search page or a custom left panel, those pages must also be included in the fluid component. In addition, it's at the component level that you specify what features will be available in the fluid banner, such as the back button, the navbar button, and so on. These banner features are available to users accessing the fluid pages within the component. Note that the system uses the item label value in the component grid to populate the page name that appears in the lower section of the fluid banner. So you want to make sure it is an accurate, intuitive description of the page for your users. Starting with PeopleTools 854, the Fluid tab is included in the Component Properties dialog box. This tab displays the Fluid-specific settings for components. While these are all documented in PeopleSoft Online Help, we'll briefly describe the options here. Fluid mode is the critical setting for fluid components. If it is not set, the component will not render as fluid. Layout only is a testing feature that displays the borders of all the group boxes on the page in different colors to illustrate the scope of each group box container. Page navigation in history and return to last page in history enable component-specific operation of the back button. If the component contains pages that you want to be accessed by smartphones, select Display on Small Form Factor homepage. Otherwise, the system will not display the tile for this component on a Fluid homepage when the system is accessed by small form factor devices. Select No System Header Page and No System Side Page to override the display of the default System Header Page or the default System Side Page respectively. If you select either of these options, you are responsible for creating a custom header page or a custom side page and including them in the component definition. Select the component type. Standard. Similar to standard classic components, this type is used for most Fluid components that will include Fluid application pages. Activity guide. Used for a special type of custom Fluid activity guides. That is, Those not created using the Manage Templates menu item under the Activity Guide menu folder. Master or Detail. Used for a special type of fluid component that is used to provide access to multiple components, aggregating the navigation to the various components in a master list, which remains displayed in the left panel while the component pages are displayed on the right. Select the search page type. None disables search pages for this fluid component. Standard displays a standard search results page, which provides users with search results that they click and drill into component pages and data, which replace the entire browser window. Master or Detail displays a two-panel search results page similar to Fluid Master Detail component, which also provides users with search results that they click and drill into component pages and data. However, the search results remain active and visible in the left side panel, while the application page displays in the detail area on the right. Configurable search, introduced in PeopleTools 860, can be enabled for Fluid components, which helps you to configure search pages for Fluid components. Configurable search is available only for a standard search page. You should review the PeopleSoft online help for instructions on using configurable search for Fluid components before selecting this option. The Fluid banner features are set by selecting the items in the Header Toolbar Actions group box. Logout displays the Sign Out item in the Actions menu. Home displays the Home button on the Fluid banner for users to return directly to the default home page. Back displays the Back button in the Fluid banner, enabling the user to navigate backwards along their navigation sequence. Add to enables users to pin tiles to Fluid home pages, the nav bar, or their favorites, personalizing their navigation experience. Notifications displays the Notifications button in the Fluid banner. Navbar displays the Navbar button on the Fluid banner, providing users with additional navigation features such as the Navigator menu, Favorites, and other Navbar tiles. Help is reserved for PeopleSoft delivered components and displays the Help item in the Actions menu for the Fluid pages in the component. Notify displays the Notify item in the Actions menu, enabling users to send notifications to other users. You must set the viewport for each Fluid component. Doing so ensures that your Fluid application operates properly across device types, particularly on small form factor devices such as smartphones. Import the PT-Page-Utils application class into a component post-build PeopleCode program. Invoke the setDefaultViewport method, which is the recommended approach because it sets the recommended defaults. Registering Fluid components uses the same process as registering classic components. When registering Fluid components, keep these items in mind. Add the Fluid component to a portal registry, menu, and permission list, just as you would for a classic component. Select target content for the access type. To simplify access to this Fluid component as a tile, the folder name to which you add the content reference should be a subfolder within the Fluid Pages content reference folder. Note that Fluid components can be registered to other folders within the menu structure, which would allow for direct menu navigation to the component rather than via a tile on a Fluid homepage. This example depicts the selections in the registration wizard. Make sure target content is selected at the top, which is the default. When selecting a content reference folder, generally select a subfolder that resides within the Fluid Pages folder in the portal registry. You can create your own subfolders to contain custom Fluid content. In this example, Other Apps was created as a custom subfolder for custom Fluid content. It corresponds to the Other Applications folder within the Fluid Pages folder. After the component registration process completes successfully in Application Designer, there are a couple of ways to verify that your Fluid content reference is where you want it in the portal registry. First, you can access the content reference definition itself in the portal registry. Make sure it is in the correct content reference folder and review the content reference settings, ensuring they are appropriate for the intended usage of the application. We will work more with content reference settings for Fluid applications in the next topic. Another way to verify a successful component registration for a Fluid application is to attempt to personalize a Fluid homepage by adding a tile. In the Add Tile dialog box, you should see your content reference within the appropriate content reference folder. Only content references added to a subfolder within the Fluid Pages content reference folder can be added as a tile to a Fluid homepage. Note that a visual icon and text indicates whether a tile will display on a home page accessed from a smartphone. In this example, the My System Profile tile will display on a home page accessed from a smartphone. If the component was registered to a content reference folder outside Fluid Pages, you cannot access it from the Add Tile dialog box. However, depending on where you registered it, it may be accessible directly via menu navigation. Prior to starting the next demonstration, we created two definitions offline that will be used in the demo. We did this to simplify the video. In Application Designer, we created a custom menu definition named My Apps and added the Use bar item to the menu. In the browser, in Structure and Content, that is, the portal registry, we created the Other Applications subfolder under the Fluid Pages folder. While you could use PeopleSoft delivered definitions to simplify the steps for completing this demo, we do not recommend that you do so for custom applications in your production environments. Create your own custom menu definitions, portal registry subfolders, and permission lists for registering your custom Fluid applications. In this demonstration, we will clone an existing classic component definition, make it a Fluid component, add our Fluid page to the converted component, add required post-built people code, and then finally register it. So here we are in Application Designer, and we've got the My System Profile classic component already here. So we open the component user-main self, and we'll do a file save as to clone it. And again, we are going to add something to the definition name to indicate that it is a Fluid definition to set it apart from its classic counterpart. So we'll add _FL. And when prompted to save a copy of the people code associated with this component, click Yes. So in the cloned component definition, we'll need to remove the classic page from this definition. And we'll want to drop our new Fluid page into this new Fluid component. We can just drag and drop from our project. The default item label is the page definition name, User Self-Service FL, which is not very user-friendly. Since this item label is displayed in the Fluid banner as the page title, we will want to update it to something that is user-friendly. Replace the default item label with My System Profile. To update the component properties, go to the Fluid tab. Make this a Fluid component by selecting the Fluid Mode checkbox. If this is not selected, the component will not render as Fluid. To allow the tile for this component to be displayed on Fluid home pages when accessed by smartphones, select the Display on Small Form Factor homepage checkbox. And what we will want to do is add some features to the Fluid banner using the options in the Header Toolbar Actions group box. So select Logout, Home, Back, and Navbar. Also deselect Help. Because this is a custom component, we are disabling Help. To complete the Fluid modifications to the component definition, we'll need to add required people code to the post-build event. Setting a viewport is essential for ensuring proper rendering of every Fluid application across all device types. Using the PT-PageUtils application package is the recommended method for setting the viewport. From the Structure tab, open the People Code editor. Ensure that the component's post-build event is displayed. Add a statement to import the PT-PageUtils utils class as the first line to the existing People Code program. Then, after the existing declare statement, Enter the people code to execute the set default viewport method. Finally, save the component definition, which saves the people code and performs syntax validation, ensuring that your code modifications were entered correctly. Next, we'll need to register the component to create a content reference definition in the portal registry. On the Start page, keep the default option selected. So we want to add the component to a menu, to the portal registry, and to a permission list. On the Add to menu and bar page, select a custom menu to add this component to. To keep things simple for this demonstration, we've selected the My Apps menu and the Use bar that were created previously. On the Create Content Reference page, keep the default of target content selected. Select a folder that is a subfolder of the Fluid Pages folder. To simplify this demonstration, we've selected the Other Apps folder that was created previously. For the label, replace the default value with a user-friendly value. This will become the title of the tile on the home page and in the Add Tile dialog box. Enter My System Profile. Similarly, replace the default description with a user-friendly value. And we will add the component to the PeopleSoft User Permission List or PTPT 1000. To simplify this demonstration, we've used a PeopleTools Delivered Permission List. This is not recommended for custom application development. Instead, create and use your own custom permission list. And after reviewing our selections, we will begin the registration process. After the registration process completes, we can review the log to make sure it was successful. And now we can go view the content reference definition in the portal registry. So, to verify registration, we need to head to the portal registry. We'll use global search to navigate to Structure and Content, the portal registry. And then go into Fluid Structure Content, Fluid Pages, Other Applications. And we can see that the content reference that we just created is there. So we've verified that it exists and is in the correct folder. And we can now add it as a tile to a Fluid home page because it is in a subfolder of the Fluid Pages folder. So now, let's add a tile to our Fluid home page so we can access our new Fluid application. So, on our Fluid home page, we can select Personalize Home Page from the Homepage Actions menu. And on the Personalize Homepage page, click Add Tile. And select the Other Applications folder where we registered the new Fluid component. Note that the smartphone icon on this entry indicates that the tile for this Fluid application will be available when the homepage is accessed from a smartphone. Then select our new application. After clicking Save, we see our new tile on the home page. We can click it and go into our new Fluid application. In the next topic, we'll describe ways that we can touch up this page and make it appear and behave more like delivered Fluid applications. In this topic, we'll take a look at some simple ways you can make your Fluid page look more like the Fluid applications delivered by PeopleSoft. When you create or convert new Fluid applications, there are often a few cleanup tasks that you need to consider. What those cleanup tasks will be depends upon the content of the page and how you created it. For the purposes of our demonstration, we'll focus on making the tile more user-friendly, removing the static text page title, setting the grid layout type to a type optimized for Fluid applications, adding any buttons required such as a Save button, converting inline elements to block elements, applying CSS styles as needed to adjust layout or look and feel, and creating a nested block structure. In addition, when you convert a classic page to Fluid, you may have copied classic page controls or features that are not supported in Fluid, for example, frames, pop-up menus, scroll bars, and trees. Review PeopleSoft online help to determine which page controls and features are not supported in Fluid, and then remove or disable those on any page that you've converted from Classic to Fluid. Let's start with the tile. Because the tile is typically the first element a user sees when accessing a Fluid application, it should be labeled intuitively, be visually appealing using graphical characteristics and possibly dynamic content to aid in quick identification and an improved user experience. You can select a different graphic in place of the default generic graphic. The graphic you select can help to communicate the purpose of the tile's underlying business transaction. It also improves the look and feel of the tile immensely. With a simple change in the content reference definition, we can transform the mundane tile on the left to something more visually appealing and more intuitive. Oracle recommends that you use scalable vector graphics or SVG images since the images will be rendered in different places and on different size devices. With SVG images, the scaling is automatic. On the Fluid Attributes page, use the Image Name field to insert a custom image in place of the default image provided by PeopleTools. If no image is selected, the system displays the default image on the tile. The first thing a user will see is a tile that links them to your new Fluid application. It's a good idea to make it as visually appealing as possible. Looking at the tile we just added, it displays the default graphic. Looking at the other Fluid applications on our home page, they have more interesting graphics. So let's see what we can do to improve the visual appeal of this tile. We are going to go into the portal registry and edit the content reference definition for our Fluid application. On the general page, note some of the important values that we set previously. The label field from the registration wizard, which can be updated here, as well as Fluid mode and display on small form factor from the component properties, which cannot. Now let's update the graphic. To do that, let's go to the Fluid Attributes page. Here we need to update the image name field. If no image is selected, the PeopleTools default graphic is used. Enter the name or select a new image name. When we save and return to the home page, we've made an impact on how our Fluid application is presented. Notice that our tile is more presentable now and looks more like the other Fluid applications on the home page. When the system loads a Fluid page, the value from the item label column for that page from the component definition is displayed in the Fluid banner. Remember, initially the default name of the item label is the page definition name, which normally is not ideal for users to see. We already changed this label after we added the page definition to the component definition. However, because the page name gets displayed in the Fluid banner, there really is no longer a need to provide a static text page label on the page itself to identify the page. This is unnecessary on a Fluid page and takes up valuable page real estate, which is something to consider, especially on small form factors. So, remove the static text page title from the page definition. In this example, general profile information is no longer necessary on the page. So if we access our Fluid application using our new tile, we'll see the old classic page title, which is a static text control at the top of the page. Because we updated the item label for the page in the component definition, we see a user-friendly page title in the lower section of the Fluid banner. And we no longer need the static text control on the page itself. To remove it, we need to return to our page definition in Application Designer. We no longer need this static text page title because we have a label displayed in the Fluid banner. So if we now return to our Fluid application, when we return to our page, we see that the old static text is no longer displayed. You specify the grid layout type on the Use tab of the Grid Properties dialog box. With the new layout approach of fluid pages, new grid types were introduced to make grids behave as expected in fluid applications. One of those fluid-specific grid layout types is the Flex Grid layout. This grid layout type is optimized for fluid. It enables the grid to function within the Flexbox model. And it also updates the look and feel of the grid, making it consistent with the look and feel of the other fluid elements on the page. Unlike classic pages, fluid pages do not use the toolbar settings of the Components Internet tab. Because you cannot get a Save button for free, you need to manually add one to a fluid page if one is required. In our demonstration, we'll add a simple Save push button at the bottom of our page definition so that if we want to save any information, we can. We'll change the push button properties to trigger a toolbar action of the type Save. And we'll change the label of the button to Save. Alternatively, you can add a footer page definition to your component to display action buttons for all pages in a component. If we scroll down and begin to look at the grids, we can see that the grids have picked up some fluid attributes by default. For example, this is the fluid representation for a checkbox. It's a toggle switch, a more modern look and feel as opposed to the classic checkbox. However, we want to set the grids to a type that is specific to the fluid environment. So again, we need to return to Application Designer. So here in Application Designer, let's adjust our grid properties. This is the original grid layout type, Classic Grid Layout, which is suitable for a classic application. But for fluid, this is a better choice, Flex Grid Layout. And if for some reason we wanted the checkbox to appear within the grid as it did in Classic, we can set its control structure to Basic. This will have it appear more like a classic checkbox as opposed to the more modern switch. For testing purposes, we'll change it now and then change it back later. And we'll save changes. And now if we return to our fluid application, we can see that the grid has a different fluid look and feel. And by changing the control structure, we change how that control renders in the fluid application. No longer does it have the modern look and action of a switch. It's just a classic checkbox. However, notice that we don't have a way to save our changes. So let's go back into Application Designer to fix that. But first, let's revert the checkbox in the grid back to the Advanced Fluids setting. So now we can add a Save button. Insert Push Button Hyperlink, and we can drop it right next to the grid here. Double-click to open the Properties dialog box. We can delete the record name. And we are going to select Toolbar Action and then an action type of Save. And we can go over to the Label tab and add a text label to our button. Note that in a production application, you would probably be using a message catalog entry. And again, we'll save our page definition. You may be wondering why we've placed our Save button to the right of the grid rather than below it. Recall, with fluid page design, it's not a what you see is what you get scenario. Where you put a control is not entirely relevant. At runtime, the system uses CSS to arrange the page elements. The order in which the controls appear in the page definition is relevant, but the physical placement of the control in relation to the controls around it has no bearing on the runtime display. Now, if we return to our fluid application to review our changes, we can see that the checkbox in the grid has returned to a toggle switch. And we now have a Save button, So we can save any changes to this page. And note that the Save button appears below the grid and not to the right of it, as it was laid out in design time. After saving our changes, when we return to the home page, we are no longer prompted with a save warning. Inline elements flow similar to text and generally assume a position on the same line depending on the form factor. Placing a layout group box around the inline elements makes them block elements by default. Block elements are positioned according to the styles applied to the layout group box, for example, in columns. Hyperlinks by default are inline elements. So, this can be useful in some situations. But in others, they might seem to run together all in a line, like text in a paragraph, as you can see in the example at the bottom of the screen. If you want these hyperlinks to appear one below the other, you can simply place a layout group box around each one. This by default will make them block elements. And without adding any special styling, they will naturally assume a position of one below the other. Notice that these two hyperlinks at design time appear one below the other. But as we saw in our application and in the example on the slide, they appear right next to each other at runtime. Just another example of what we put on the design time page definition is not exactly what we see at runtime. So if we want these two hyperlinks to appear one below the other, we can do that by surrounding each with its own layout group box. Insert the group box. Then set the type to layout only. And then repeat the same steps for the second hyperlink. To view the effects of this change, we can return to our Fluid application. And we can see that these hyperlinks now appear one below the other simply by adding layout group boxes around them, changing them from inline to block elements. For every Fluid page or page control, you can use the application-specific styles group box to either extend or override the system default styles applied by PeopleTools. Because many options are similar to those already described for the Fluid tab of a page definition, let's quickly review the style settings on the Fluid tab for a page control. Use style classes to enter application-specific style classes to apply in addition to or in place of the system default styles, that is, the PeopleTools styles automatically applied by default. This setting applies to all form factors unless specifically overridden by subsequent form factor overrides. Separate each style class with a space. Use form factor style class override to override any style defined in the style classes field by applying these styles to a specific form factor, that is, device size. Use suppress system-specific style classes to suppress any system default styles that are automatically applied by PeopleTools for this control type. If not selected, the application-specific styles will be appended to the default system styles such that both styles are used. In addition, you can prevent a page control from being displayed on specific form factor by selecting the checkbox for the form factor in the Suppress on Form Factor group box. When selected, this page control is never rendered on that form factor, similar to setting a field as invisible for a classic page. Some styles are standalone styles, meaning that they can be applied straight to a control and take immediate effect. These styles don't require a specific construct or structure with a set of styles laid out in a precise order for the styling to take effect. In this example, the PSC primary style has been added to the Save button to extend the system default styles. The PSC primary style is a delivered style that is used to indicate the primary action button on a page so that it is easily seen by users. The style makes the button display as dark brown, while the rest of the buttons on the page may be the default color. So as we can see in our application, The Save button does appear on the page, but its default setting might make it easily missed by the user. If we want to draw attention to it, we are going to need to add additional styling. So in Application Designer, we need to go to the Push Button Hyperlink Properties dialog box and go to the Fluid tab, where we can apply a style to this button, which will be added in addition to any default styles already applied. So if we want to have the dark brown color that makes it stand out on the page, we need to add the PSC primary style. And when we return to our application to see the results, we see that the button has the PSC primary style applied. Some styles need to be applied to specific constructs, such as a nested set of group box containers and in a specific order. For example, the construct depicted here is a two-column layout of page elements. Let's say the actual elements are date fields. The construct first has an outer container with the PSC column 2 style applied to it, establishing the two-column layout. This is the parent container, and it contains two child container group boxes surrounding each column. These sibling containers have the styles PSC column item 1 of 2 applied to each, indicating that each is a column in a two-column layout. When this renders, they will appear side by side on larger form factors, each taking up to 50% or half the horizontal space. Then on smaller form factors, these items will appear one below the other. The Flexbox model automatically positions these elements as is appropriate by the device size. The styles applied to the child containers rely on the previously applied style of the parent. Note that with layout group boxes, the group box label is displayed only during design time, not at runtime. It can be helpful to use the style applied to the container as the group box label so that while you develop and design, you can always be aware of the styles being applied to that container. So we've done a lot to this page already to make it appear and behave like Fluid. Let's tackle one more task and explore some other options for modifying the layout. Let's take a look at the From Date and To Date fields. First of all, on a Fluid page, space is at a premium, particularly when it's displayed on a smartphone. So we probably don't want to have examples of how users are to fill in the fields actually displayed on the page, consuming space. Instead, using Fluid options, we can add placeholder text inside the fields themselves. Also, if we would like the From Date and the To Date to appear side by side, we can do that by adding a column structure around these two fields and applying appropriate styling. And by doing so, we can have them appear side by side on a larger form factor. But on a smaller form factor, they can assume the position of being one below the other, taking advantage of how the Flexbox model automatically positions elements on a page. First, let's take care of the on-page descriptions of how to enter data into these fields. These were the examples. We can quickly hide them just by adding the PSC hidden style to them instead of deleting them. Then we can add the placeholder text to the date fields themselves. Again, if this were a production application, you might use the message catalog rather than the static text. Next, we want to create the column structure around these two items. So in order to achieve this structure, first of all, you're going to need to move some of the other controls out of the way so that you have space to put in your container group boxes. This involves moving these controls up a little bit and moving these controls down a little bit. Then you're first going to add the parent container. To which you will apply the PSC column 2 style and making sure the group box type is layout only. And it's also good practice to include the style name in the label of the group box. Remember that these don't show up at runtime, only at design time. This helps let you know which styles are being applied to each portion of the structure. Likewise, you'll do the same to your child containers. Except the style that you apply is the PSC column item 1 of 2. It's also a layout-only group box. And again, the best practice is to apply the style name to the label so that you see that at design time. And you do the same to the other child group box. To view the changes, first we'll test using a large form factor. We can see that the from date and the to date are positioned side by side on the same line. Also notice that since we've hidden the on-screen instructions, they no longer appear. And the placeholder text that we've added to the fields is appearing here to help users determine how to enter information into these fields. And if we access the system using a small form factor, in this case a medium form factor, we'll see that the from and the to dates are appearing one below the other. The Flexbox model ensures that the positioning is automatic and appropriate to the device size. In this topic, we will describe some advanced page design features that you can use in your Fluid pages. So far, you've created a Fluid page that has basic page design features. From PeopleTools 854, where Fluid was introduced, to PeopleTools 861, several page design features and other enhancements have been delivered to enhance your Fluid applications. While these are all documented in PeopleSoft Online Help, we'll briefly describe some of the features here and point you to the relevant topics in the PeopleSoft Online Help. Multiple hotspots in grid rows feature enables you to organize one or more grid columns into hotspots or clickable areas. You use container group boxes to organize grid columns into hotspots. Then you add a hidden trigger field, a hyperlink or push button to each group box to define the hotspots action. Refer to the topic Implementing Multiple Hotspots for Grid Rows in PeopleSoft Online Help. You can use Groupbox header extensions to display additional information and actions related to the contents of the primary group box. 3 types of header extensions can be defined, such as textual information, actionable information, and action items. Textual information provides short text-only information. And actionable information is the clickable control that provides additional information. An action item is a clickable button or icon representing an action associated with the group box contents. Refer to the topic Creating Group Box Header Extensions in PeopleSoft Online Help. Sectional tabs on pages provide the ability to control which portions of the page data are displayed depending on the tab selected. Sectional tabs are not a separate, distinct page control found in Application Designer. Instead, you can use one of 3 methods to create sectional tabs. To create a static set of tabs, use a group box of type tab set. To create a dynamic set of tabs, use a grid with a layout of tab set grid layout or use a scroll area with a layout of tab set. Refer to the topic Creating Sectional Tabs on a Page in PeopleSoft Online Help. You can also create a pop-up menu on a Fluid page with menu items performing any action or navigation. Fluid pop-up menus can contain only a single level of menu items. A Fluid pop-up menu is not a separate, distinct page control found in Application Designer. Instead, you can use several methodologies to create Fluid pop-up menus, including a parent group box, a hyperlink or button, and others. Refer to the topic Creating Fluid Pop-up Menus in PeopleSoft Online Help. In this topic, we will point you to different sources of information on developing fluid applications. You can download the companion slides with images and notes from this video from the Oracle Learning Library. For more information on developing applications for the PeopleSoft Fluid User Interface, refer to the PeopleSoft Online Help for PeopleTools 861 and refer to these guides: Fluid User Interface Developers Guide, Application Designer Developers Guide, Applications Users Guide, PeopleCode API Reference, PeopleCode Language Reference. You can find additional information online. On My Oracle Support, review the PeopleSoft Fluid User Interface supplemental documentation page. There you can find the CSS guide for PeopleSoft Fluid User Interface, in addition to other links to supplemental information. You can also review the following red papers on My Oracle Support: Converting Classic PIA Components to PeopleSoft Fluid User Interface, PeopleSoft Fluid User Interface Programming Fundamentals. On the PeopleSoft Information Portal, you will find a link to the PeopleSoft Fluid User Experience Standards, which provide guidance on using page controls, navigation, tiles, and other fluid features to create usable and consistent fluid applications. In addition to PeopleSoft Online Help, My Oracle Support, and the PeopleSoft Information Portal, there is also a set of courses offered at Oracle University that can help you prepare for any fluid implementation. The main course would be the 3-day course titled PeopleSoft Fluid User Interface. This course is built on PeopleTools 857 and covers the fundamentals of developing and working with fluid user interface applications. This course is ideal for developers and implementers who are already familiar with PeopleSoft application development tools and methodologies. The course titled PeopleSoft Fluid User Interface Advanced Topics is ideal for developers and implementers who have already completed the main course, PeopleSoft Fluid User Interface.